There is the link if anybody would like that. I'm going to do a little going live notification for Instagram, and then we'll jump in. All right. So hello, everybody. My name is Tara, and I am the National Media Chair for Neurosci. My pronouns are they, she, and thank you for joining us for day 2 of our Outstanding Members Through the Years panels, where we are talking with some incredible folks who have helped to shape neurosci on the local and national levels. So as just a little rundown of our schedule, I'll go over some award and grant dates to start off with, and then we'll do an introduction of our panelists, and then get into a little Q&A, and then kind of open up a dialogue into a little bit more casual. So first of all, our upcoming award dates are May 2nd for our Outstanding Student and Faculty Members of the Year Awards and for our Chapter of the Year Awards. And so that is in just a couple of weeks. And if you have a really incredible person that you know, including yourself, that you want to nominate for the tremendous work that has been done for neurosci, then those are a great place to do so. So I'll go ahead and jump into introducing our incredible panelists who are joining us tonight. The first is Rahmah Ibrahim, who is a senior at Georgia State University, where she's pursuing her BS in neuroscience and is a current researcher in the lab of Dr. Dan Cox, investigating neural mechanisms and the molecular bases underlying the specification of class-specific dendrite morphologies. For her research efforts, she was a Georgia State University Brains and Behavior Scholar in the B&B Summer Scholars Program, which provided competitive summer fellowships to enhance the research experiences of undergrad students. And she was selected as a 2023 Louis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation Fellow, which is an NSF-funded initiative designed to support historically underrepresented students in STEM fields. For these, she's presented her work under the guidance of her current PI, Dr. Dan Cox, on investigating protein-to-protein interaction between DAR1 and DCBP in regulatory processes for dendritic arborization, and does ROS facilitate TRPA1 mediated nociception in Drosophila. She served as president for neuroscience at Georgia State University during the 2021 to 2022 academic year and organized the 2022 Atlanta Neuroscience Symposium on Identity and Bias. She received the 2022 Outstanding Neurosci Member of the Year award for her dedication to increasing support, accessibility, and opportunities in neuroscience at GSU and into the broader Atlanta community. One of the core aspects of Ibrahim's leadership has been her service to all of those around her, where she's provided support in extensive ways, including developing new clubs and programs and serving on the boards of both professional and cultural clubs to increase the number of personal and professional opportunities for her peers, volunteering at several local organizations to increase access to healthcare, education, and resources, and increasing health literacy for underserved communities, facilitating the transition of resettled refugees, and celebrating the richness of perspective of those around her. She is also the author of The Act Is Up, a collection of poems exploring self-discovery, resilience, and self-love amidst life's challenges. Our next panelist is Dr. Leslie Stone-Roy, who is a professor at Colorado State University and the director of CSU's Brain Awareness Week. She received her BS in biology from the University of Colorado in Denver, her PhD in cell and developmental biology at the University of Colorado, and completed postdoctoral training on taste cell signaling from Colorado State University. While she doesn't conduct direct research at this time, she has previously investigated sensory substitutions, currently runs a course teaching students how to do research with C. elegans, and provides mentorship to students conducting research in the biomedical engineering department. For over 20 years, she has been deeply involved with neuroscience outreach in the Fort Collins community, having trained hundreds of CSU students to teach middle and high school students about the brain and nervous system. Dr. Stone-Roy received the 2024 CSU Demo Day Award for Innovation in Veterinary Medicine and Biomedical Science, and the 2024 CVMBS Living Our Values Award for Innovation. In her teaching and mentorship, she focuses on experiential learning to increase student engagement and developing new teaching models, courses, teaching techniques, and service learning, and often collaborates on interdisciplinary research both within and outside of the CSU community. She was also invited as a keynote speaker at the 2024 Regional Human Anatomy and Physiology Society meeting with her keynote address entitled Experiential Activities to Increase Student Engagement. And last but not least, we have our wonderful former president of National Neurosci, Dr. Michael Black, who is a principal senior lecturer in neuroscience and sustainability at Georgia State University. He's completed his BS in biology, ecology, and systematics from Cornell University, and his master's of science and PhD in biology from Georgia State University, and completed postdoctoral training in the Center for Behavioral Neuroscience and Psychology Department, also at Georgia State. Dr. Black is the faculty advisor for the Neurosci Georgia State chapter and served on the National Neurosci Council in the presidential roles from 2019 to 2023, doing an extra year of service because he loves it so much. And he also serves as the co-chair for the University Senate Sustainability Committee at Georgia State. His formal research in neuroscience investigates social interactions and how they impact the brain. And even further than that, he is passionate about training neuroscience students and approaching problems through the lenses of sustainability, accessibility, and creativity. Dr. Black has a tremendous ability to incorporate experiences and perspectives from different fields, people, and goals, and meet them at the intersection to develop a path forward, providing support and knowledge in whatever way he can. He has received numerous grants for different initiatives, including the Atlanta Regional Commission Community Choices Grant to develop a bike plan for the GSU campus, and STEM mini grant on preparing students for creative experimentation in neuroscience, and has delivered posters on progress, vision, and change at the classroom and institutional levels, helping students transition from cookbook labs to real research, the neurobiology lab at Georgia State University, and building sustainability from what appears to be ground zero with zero funding, a Georgia State University case study. So thank you all so much to our panelists for being here today. Is there anything that you all would like to introduce about yourselves?
Yes, thank you for inviting us, and I'm happy to be here.
Exactly what I would have said. Happy to be here. I'm so happy to have you all here. So to kind of kick it off, I'd love to know what got you all interested in neuroscience to begin with.
I can start. I wasn't interested in neuroscience at all. I was interested in becoming a marine biologist, which I am, and mostly interested in getting the best scuba diving experience I could get. And there was a graduate student at Cornell doing research who needed a field assistant in Papua New Guinea studying clownfish. And I was like, I'm in. And so I did everything I could to get that position, and I got that position. And I went to Papua New Guinea and had a great time doing marine research on clownfish. And I was studying behavior, and I was like, oh, I was thinking I was going to do ecology, and I really like behavior. And so I took a neural systems and behavior course at Cornell in my senior year, and really enjoyed it. It's almost a shame in neuroscience that I didn't find neuroscience faster, because Cornell is a great place for it. But I was in ecology up until the end and graduated with a degree in ecology, because that's where most of my coursework was in biology. But I loved doing that behavior work, and I wasn't really interested in the brain even after that. I was really interested in maybe doing behavior, but I had a advisor that I was planning to work with, and one of my mentors at Cornell, Tom Seeley, saw me and asked, and I told him who I wanted to work with, who was my top choice, and he said, "Oh yeah, he does great research, but he's a horrible advisor." And I was like, "Oh shoot, well that just knocked down the number one person that I wanted to work with." And he's like, "I have someone you should meet." And he brought me down the hall and he introduced me to who became my PhD advisor, Matthew Grober. Um, and I went to Arizona State University out in the desert to study marine biology. But my field work was off the coast of California, Catalina Island, studying a sex-changing fish and looking at the physiologic and brain changes in that sex-changing fish. And so that's what really got me into neuroscience, was scuba diving, and doing some of the work in the brain that the Grover Lab was doing.
I guess I can go next. So I started out as a child as wanting to be a veterinarian. And so I was studying biology at CSU with the idea of going to vet school after that. I became interested in neuroscience through some of the classes that I took, but I was also very interested in genetics, and I was still interested in veterinary medicine. And then I worked for a veterinarian for a while, like 6 months, and kind of got a feel for what they really do on a day-to-day basis, and took that into account, as well as how much veterinary school costs and how much veterinarians make, and decided that maybe that wasn't such a good path. In addition, at the time I was doing it, there weren't emergency veterinary clinics, and so you were expected to be on call every third night in addition to these other things. And I knew I wanted to have a family, and I didn't want to be that much in debt, so I decided to look at research instead and started applying to PhD programs. And the PhD program that I decided to go to and got accepted into was a cell and developmental program. And like most programs, when you're in a PhD program, you pick 3 different rotations in different labs to go through. And from those, you're supposed to pick your thesis lab. So I picked a genetics lab, a neuroscience lab, and then one that was kind of a combination of genetics and neuroscience. And so I enjoyed all 3 of those rotations, but similar to Dr. Black, I decided to go with the advisor that I thought that I could learn the most from, rather than the project that appealed to me the most. Because the project that appealed to me the most was a combination of neuroscience and genetics, and it was human research, which was really fascinating. But the PI never really talked to me, and he had a postdoctoral student teaching me everything, and he'd often be telling that postdoctoral student that he was doing things incorrectly. And so my thought was, I'm going to end up in this lab and not learn a lot. Whereas the lab that I ended up going into was a neuroscience lab that studied taste receptor cells. And so I became the PhD student for Dr. Tom Finger, who was an awesome mentor and advisor. And when I first started doing research, it was on taste buds, and I never grew up wanting to be a taste bud researcher. But in the process of learning about them and doing my PhD work, I got really fascinated with all sensory systems. And to this day, sensory systems are my favorite thing to teach about and my favorite thing to do research with. And that's kind of how I got into neuroscience.
I'm sitting here just like, wow, what an honor to be among you two on a panel. I've already just now picked up some strategies I hear with picking your PIs. That's awesome. Well, for me, I was homeschooled. Dr. Black kind of knows my background a little bit, but I was homeschooled up until I finished high school. So when I started college, I only applied to one school. I don't know why. And I was really just interested in the human systems. And to me, that meant biology. And so throughout like my career, my first semester at Georgia State University, I was really just trying to grapple with the real world essentially, and found myself really gravitating to reading a lot of it was neurobiology more so topics in my free time. And I
I just was like, I wonder if there's a major for this. And I kind of just put a pin in it and never revisited it and just picked from a multicultural household, you kind of are pushed to careers that make money faster or you graduate sooner. So I never really thought of academic as like this rich opportunity for me to just grow as an individual, more so as like how to make money in the real world. But I quickly fell away from that kind of, I don't know, structure I had been raised with. And I found myself like constantly finding opportunity after opportunity to study the human body in some way. And I noticed after a while that like my books had a theme. All the books that I was reading, I would read on the train to campus, were like neuroscience books. And I was like, I wonder if there's a major in neuroscience. And believe it or not, the same week I was having those thoughts of like going to the advising office to find out, Dr. Laura Caruth, I'm sure some of you, maybe the name rings a bell. She was actually pretty successful individual at Georgia State University. She was the director of the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning a while back, and she's associate professor in Neuroscience Institute. She saw me reading one of his Helter Skelter books that were, it was a histology of his brain. And she was like, that is an interesting book. And I looked up and we were both on our way to GSU. I didn't know she went to GSU. So we started chatting about the book and I was like, I'm a nursing major and I want to be a neuroscience major, but I don't know if we have it. And like, there's the most hilarious but serendipitous moment because she was able to, one, tell me about the institute, two, invite me into it that same day, gave me a mini tour, and then got me set up with how and what I should do to get myself changed. And I did it that week. And I've ever since then felt extremely supported and happy with the degree. And yes, I've had like such a circuitous path up to this point, but it's never been for lack of learning or lack of feeling like I'm surrounded by rich opportunities to always learn new things. That's one thing about neuroscience that I love. I'm always like, I love everything. What am I going to end up studying eventually? And I don't know. I find it so fascinating. I just recently got an opportunity to do a gap year or two at Emory School of Medicine studying neuropsychology under one of my mentors that I've known for a couple of years. He's a psychiatrist and he's hell-bent on like getting me to have the clinical experience that is surrounding the neurobiology that I already am interested in, but also clinical experience and research that I could potentially get myself more solidified for applying to MD, PhD. So I kind of just found neuroscience and it found me, but I love it. I hope I stay.
That's really awesome. I love that all of you kind of have a similar story almost of like, didn't even know about neuroscience, weren't even really looking at neuroscience. And then because of kind of the people that you were surrounded by, you made your ways into it. And I also love that it kind of shows how cross-disciplinary neuroscience is and how it can be applied in so many ways. So that's really awesome. And congratulations on your opportunity for your gap year. That's really awesome. So because we're talking about kind of folks who inspired and moved you towards neuroscience, I'd love to know more about your experiences with mentorship and kind of how mentorship has really impacted you, what it means to be a mentor, what it means to be a mentee to you, and kind of just your tenets of mentorship.
Okay, I'm gonna go maybe because mine might be really short, but I just love this question. First, I'm an older sibling to 7 siblings. I'm actually one of 10. And I didn't realize, but I had a knack for mentorship from just by being an older sibling. And I found myself always seeking opportunities. You kind of want to, if you hear someone needing something or you hear a question that's not directed at you, that you know the answer to, I found myself always finding opportunities, even today, to help someone who might have been where I was and like trying to help them avoid the potholes, that I fell into at some point. And I find it so enjoyable. So for me, mentorship is really like one and the same with like existing and like going through life. As you learn, you pass the baton. As you experience new things, you're always trying to see what way you can repackage it so that it's palatable for one, but also ingestible for people who may be like a little bit behind you or coming up to where you're headed and just curious. And also for me, mentorship going forward is like treat everyone like a possible mentor. I always, whenever I sit, even if someone's younger than me and I find that there's something that interests me with them, I'm always quick to ask them a million and one questions, because you never know who you can learn the most like important information and beneficial information to you from. So even at the clinic that I work at now, I sit down sometimes with people I don't really, they have a language barrier with me. And the little bit that they do get across is so pivotal to some of the things that I've been thinking about or I didn't know how to articulate. And it took the simplest English words to get it across to me. And I'm like, you never know who you can learn from. Never be too above asking and being curious. So I love that question.
Rahmah's answer was amazing. It's hard to follow that up. I also like helping people a lot. It just kind of comes naturally to me. And I also like teaching. So together those are, part of being a mentor. And currently I mentor everything from undergraduate students to other faculty members, because I'm in a more senior position at this point and I've been at the university for quite a long time. I happen to be a non-tenure track faculty member. And right now I'm an associate professor, which is the highest level of non-tenure track professor in my department. So we have a number of assistant professors, and so I mentor all of them in terms of promotion and how they move up the ladder, so to speak, and things they should do, which I really find rewarding. And I love mentoring students. I mentor students in the classroom and then also in thesis projects. And then also with my Brain Awareness Week outreach, I teach my CSU students how to teach high school students about neuroscience, and they love it. And some of my favorite things to do are just to see my students succeeding and getting, enjoyment out of doing these kinds of things. So in terms of being a mentor, I think it's important to be welcoming and to be understanding and to be approachable to people, and be willing to talk to people. And like Rahmah said, everybody can be a mentor to you. So it is important to look for the fact that people can teach you something. You're always learning, and you can always help others learn. And I think those are both important things.
I would agree with Dr. Stoneroy and Rahmah that you can learn from anybody. You can get mentorship from anyone. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. Even mentoring students who've come to ask me to be a mentor, I sometimes walk away with more from them than I gave them, I think. I think for me as a mentee, it was always very helpful for me to have mentors at different stages ahead of me. Because like the person, Tom Seeley, who gave me the advice that I should pick a better mentor for my PhD, having people who had been in the field for a long time and kind of knew how things worked was very helpful. But getting to know, what do I do in my PhD and how do I succeed best? Tom Seeley was so far beyond that he'd forgotten what it was even like. And perhaps didn't experience a PhD the way that PhDs were decades after he had done it. And so having students who were just one step ahead of me was incredibly helpful to me, because they got it. They understood what I was going through. They still remembered what it was like, because maybe they were still going through some of the things that I was going through. And I think it's an important thing in mentoring mentees to remind them that nobody has all the answers. And we're all just kind of bumbling our way through. Some of us have been bumbling a little bit longer, so by trial and error, we've figured a couple of things out that can help in the process. But we're all learning, and we're all having to readjust as we realize, oh, that didn't work, or this works for me, but maybe not for somebody else. And so I think that's a really important piece, and being approachable and being very humble about where I've gotten, and how that's happened, because it's relied on so many different people who've helped me, not just as mentors, but just by opening doors to let me do things. I think is really good to remind mentees, because it's easy to think, oh, you do this and you do this and you do this, because that's kind of what's on your CV. But in reality, you're all over the place as you go through and figure things out. And, I would have had a very different PhD advisor if I hadn't just run into Tom Seeley that day by happenstance. I would never have even gotten into neuroscience if I hadn't wanted to do scuba diving in Papua New Guinea, and that brought me into behavior, which brought me into more neuroscience type stuff. And so those things I think are really important to keep in mind when you're a mentor and also a mentee. And this is something that I haven't done as well, and I wish I did it better. So this might be a suggestion for Rahmah, which is I never kept a good sort of diary or notebook of my experiences, but in those times when I really did, it was incredibly helpful because when I looked back, I could see how far I came. It's easy to think, oh, I've always been like this. But if you have some of those snippets at different times, and it doesn't necessarily need to be every day, but maybe like once a year to reflect, um, you can see the progress you've made, and also remind yourself of what it was like way back when you are a mentor, because you might forget some of the anxieties that you had so long ago. I had an undergraduate once who said, I wish I could just go back to being 4 because life was so good then. And I said, it only seems that way from your perspective now. When you were 4, you did not feel that way.
Yeah, I love that. And Rama, I love that you brought up about how you can learn from anybody. Something that I hold really dear to me is kind of this idea that like everybody knows something that you don't know. And like when we talk about like, oh, somebody is smart, like there are so many different ways that people are smart, like even if it's not in the traditional academia way, even if it's not this way. And it's just about like finding like what are they smart at, because everybody is smart at something and has skills in some kind of way. And I find myself in this position in neurosci. I learned so much from my team, and that is like every day I just learn something because of how they bring questions to me. And I think like, yeah, I've grown so much just from like learning from my team. And so yeah, that's really awesome. And I love that idea too about like keeping kind of a note of like, when like the progress that you've made. Because a lot of what I've heard in these conversations throughout this year has been about how long the journey is. Like it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And so like things take a lot longer than you expect them to. And then kind of like when you look back, you're like, oh, whoa, whoa, I'm able to do this now and I wasn't able to do it then. That's wow. Um, but yeah, that's really awesome. Um,
I love the idea, and I'm taking that, Dr. Black, and I'm running with it.
yeah, yes.
I used to journal a lot, and I think this is a great reminder to resume.
Yeah. Especially as you go into all of your different opportunities and like seeing all of the different things. And I love too that like you kind of you see mentorship in such different ways, like even with your family. I think that's such a beautiful idea of how like you mentor and how you like bring back and give back to the generations that come after you. And I love that we have kind of two different stages of careers here, and because Leslie and Michael, you have given back so much to your communities, to wonderful students like Rama. And then Rama, you have done so much to give back to your communities, and I'm sure we'll just continue to do so. Um, so kind of following in a similar vein, and maybe this is the same but a little different, but what does leadership mean to you, and kind of what are qualities in some of your favorite leaders and qualities of leadership in yourself that you've admired as you have moved through the different stages of your career?
I guess I could start first this time. So good leaders to me listen to people and they, take multiple points of view and they're not just stuck in their own way of doing things. And they also lead by example. So being, honest about things and trustworthy and, those kinds of things are always important, I think, in leaders. And then I don't know what else I would say a good leader is. That's obviously somebody who knows, whatever it is that they're leading in, that has the knowledge, but they're also able to say they don't know something if something comes up. I think that's important too. And that goes along with being honest and just open to different ideas from other people and talking to people. And yeah, leading by example. Those are the big things for me.
I would agree with those. I would also say some of the best leaders that I've known are lifting other people up on a regular basis. They're not taking credit, they're giving credit, and they're challenging people in ways that they might not challenge themselves to achieve something better and become something better. Those are the best people that I've been led by, where they're supporting me, they're letting me make mistakes, so I can learn from those mistakes, and not saying, oh my gosh, you made this horrible mistake. How could you have done that? But all right, so this was a pretty bad mistake. Let's talk about how we might improve for next time and what you can learn from this. And that's the kind of person that helps you to take risks so that you can achieve better things if you feel like you're in a safe space where you can fall down and make a mistake and get back up and recover from it.
I absolutely love your answers. I honestly was like, I need to think about that because one of the thing about leadership in general is that it's so varied depending on what it is you're doing, what you're leading. And although I've had a lot of experiences leading in different capacities, I can't even begin, I don't even call myself a leader. Even though a lot of people will say, oh, you're a leader because of this set experiences. As I go through those experiences, I feel almost as if I'm serving more than those I'm leading. And for me, that's like one of the biggest takeaways because oftentimes the leadership positions that I hold teach me more than I'm teaching. And it's crazy because most of the opportunities you're given, it's like Dr. Black said, it's almost like a competitive, it's a space where people expect the leader to take credit or to want to be like getting all of the praise for the work that's being done. But any leader will tell you the heavy lifting really has to do with making sure that the people who are on your team feel supported. And if you're at the top and it's like, it depends on the structure, if it's like a pyramid style structure, whatever it is, the leader, if they're a good leader, will truly feel like the team is a part of themselves. Like you can't see the functionality of the group working without understanding each person, understanding how you're supporting them as they go through, understanding that, they're also walking away from this a better leader and their role that's playing a part of this bigger role. So for me, leadership just has to be with like being as, what's the word for seeing things from above, being as much as you can, someone who has their hands in every pot, but who's also taking away as much as they can. Like if you're learning from the person you're teaching, that means you're doing it right. That's what I think when it comes to leadership. And honestly, one of the mentors you mentioned, like it's a good example of a mentor for me is my mom. I see her parent in certain ways that really instills in me, it kind of checks me, one, for humility, recognizing that like you can allow somebody that you care for and you want to see them succeed to stumble a little bit, to build resilience, to go through experiences that maybe you could help them avoid, but to give them the tools necessary and then let them build whatever it is that they need to build. So like, yeah, as a leader, you have to step back sometimes, but always be available to encourage and supply whatever's necessary. But such a hard question to answer, but a great question. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with those two. Oops, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I agree with that too, in terms of lifting people up. And sometimes you have to step back and, not be a leader in a way, and let them take the reins so that they can develop fully and so that they can learn by their own mistakes rather than you always showing them the way. I think that is important. That's a good point.
Yeah, definitely. Something that I've noticed in like a lot of leaders that I've really respected is the ways that they are observers oftentimes. And while there is a lot of behind the scenes things that we may not see, being like an observer in situations and being able to see folks' strengths and also give them kind of these challenges that where they can fail safely and still, be supported. I mean, I think that that is so critical because that really changes the way that you approach situations as you move forward. Like if you were supported when you failed, then it's like, okay, like I can make mistakes and things are still going to be okay. And I'm still going to be able to be in my role and all of that. So I think those are really great and lifting each other up because there is no team if there's only one person trying to do everything. And yeah, I'm just like processing all these beautiful nuggets of information that you all are giving. So I think that like kind of as we're talking about team building and leadership, I'd love to know kind of how you prioritize important things as when you do work with a team and you are taking in um, all of these perspectives. What does that process look like to you to take in everything and formulate a path forward and achieve goals?
I'm very much looking at when I'm on a team, how the team dynamics are working, and thinking about like, what do we need or what might make this communication better between these people or me and somebody else or the group as a whole, and trying to refine the process so that we can rely on the strengths of who we have and maybe recruit who we're missing or the skills that we're missing. So I'm very careful, and I think this is probably true for a lot of labs, on who I take into a team and how they might best fit with that team. And there might be somebody who's really good, who has great skills, but if they don't gel well with the team, I might consider not taking them because I'd much rather have somebody who can learn the skills that gels well with the team I have. Because if I throw that off with one person, it can cause some major problems across the board. And having somebody that fits well in that process is super important. And this is something I've always kept in mind when I've been job hunting too, is, is this a good fit? It might be a prestigious position or something that I'm really interested in, but if it's not a good fit at the end of the day, is it worth that? And very often it's not for me if it's not a good fit in terms of uh, how the environment and the structure works.
And I think to go along with that, you have to identify what's the most important outcome, whether it's your career, in terms of your career or a job opportunity, how do you define a success? Is a success to you, a fancy title, or is it, and a lot of money, or is it having balance and doing a job that you really are interested in? I mean, you have to take that kind of stuff into account. And also with a project, if you're prioritizing different parts of that project, what's the outcome and what's the way that's going to get there, the necessary components to get there. And if there's other components that are maybe they would make it better, but they're not necessarily absolutely necessary, I would start with the required components first, get those really solid, And then once those are solid and we have a way forward, then adding on the icing to the cake, so to speak, and making it better and better and better is kind of how I would approach a project. I have to be totally honest, and in the past, I would end up just doing stuff and getting it done by myself just because, if other people weren't doing it the way that I thought would make it the best. But that's not a good way of doing things. It's not sustainable just in terms of energy, and it doesn't allow other people to grow. So I've learned over my career that you do need to, even though you're trying to prioritize things, in your mind, you also need to involve other people and let them help as well and grow in that environment.
Delegation is huge, and yeah, it's one of the most difficult things to learn, I think, as well. You and Dr. Black covered most of the meat and potatoes. Welcome, Margie. So to answer the question that Tara asked about, like, how do we see a team functioning? Like, what are the things we prioritize or balance when we're coming into a team? Honestly, like I said, y'all covered the meat and potatoes, but I think that one of the major things I kind of want to piggyback off of Dr. Black's answer, is that the structure that already exists. If there's something that's been built prior to me coming in, the first thing I try to do in terms of learning what to prioritize is just strategizing, understanding and scoping what's already there, what the resources are, what it looks like, how it works, how it's received, how the team appreciates it, the efforts that might have already been put into it, and trying not to disrupt anything that's already harmonious. Like, if I want to change and I want to improve things, make sure that it's like a group effort moving towards, or that at least the team is clear on why it is that I want to change something. And that often like takes care of prioritization. Like, it very, very easily, things will come up very clearly, like what needs to change. And one thing I love about like starting as a leader in a new environment, no matter what, this actually is, I know I said leadership is varied, but this I think is a skill that applies to all types of leadership, is that if you can appreciate a team that already exists and the strengths that are already there, and both Dr. Stoneway and Dr. Black touched on this too, you really do not have a lot of heavy lifting to do when you start out. It's more so them coming to you with kind of their lived experiences in their roles, assuming they've already been a part of this group that you're now joining. And they've had more experience than you with this thing, but you're leading them. And so it takes, I think, a good leader to recognize that and glean from their experiences and what they don't appreciate, and that they are invested and that they're willing to continue with your leadership, and try to take that into consideration. And it creates a very strong group of individuals, no matter how large. And I think that helps with prioritization, because each person is bringing to you things that they think are a priority, and you already kind of have like a list. But I love your questions, Tara.
Yeah. It's really interesting to hear you all talk about teams, because I think that as you talk about leadership and all of these qualities of leaders, that also plays into kind of the qualities that create your ability to be part of a team. Because the things that I hear are like being observant of structures and what exists, making sure that everybody is on the same page about goals and what is it that we're actually trying to get done, and making sure that it's sustainable. Like there's something that I thought about of how like releasing control is kind of like a big part of being a team, being a good leader, and like being able to further group dynamics or group goals, and prioritize things to get what we actually want done. And I think that note that Dr. Stoneroy made about what is it that is absolutely required first, because everybody has a capacity on energy and time and resources, and sometimes you got to make do with what you have. And once that is solid, then you're able to kind of bring in all of these extra things that are like, oh, this would really enhance it. But yeah, and being able to also to kind of like be able to fail and like get things wrong sometimes, and then how do we grow, and like what do we do moving forward. So yeah, really great information. So kind of to switch gears a little bit, I'd love to know what are some like really big moments of joy that you've had in your career, and kind of the flip side, what are some moments of failure? And if you want to answer the failure question first and then the joy one after, whichever order you want to go in. Because I think that, failure is a part of it, but I think there are so many joys, and I love to hear what your joys are.
Yeah, but I can start. So some of my joys can be pretty small. I mean, for example, if I work really hard on a lecture, and I work on the content and the choreography and what I'm going to show on the PowerPoint slide versus what I'm writing on the board, and the students are all engaged, and afterwards I feel like that was a really good lecture. And my students, I can tell they were learning. They're asking good questions. That to me brings me joy. When I train all these students to go to the high school and teach the high school students about neuroscience, and those events go well, that brings me a lot of joy, because the CSU students are so happy to be learning how to teach those younger students, and they volunteer. I had I think 50 CSU students helping me at a high school last week on their free time, just because they wanted to do it. And the high school students were so thankful, and the high school teachers were so thankful. And I just walked away just being happy, because it's like it benefited so many people, and the people enjoyed it while they were learning. And those kinds of things bring me joy. And then, of course, there's the standard responses of, when you get a grant or a paper published, those are always like, yay, all this was worth something. But I also found joy in just updating my resume every year, or doing my faculty activity report, because you go, okay, I was really busy, I did get a lot done. And it kind of goes back to the journaling that Michael was talking about, but it's in a different way, that it's your end of your year faculty report, but you write in there, it's like, okay, I did do a lot this year, and this made me happy, and that made me happy. In terms of failures, again, the standard answers are you don't get a paper published, or you don't get a grant, and those are disappointing. But also just if other things interfere and I'm not able to give the kind of lectures that I like to give to my students, and I feel like it's not as good as I can make it, that to me is disappointing. And I don't like that at all. Or if you put a lot of work into something and then it doesn't work out, that's frustrating, but that's also just part of any job. So, yeah, I guess that's all I would say.
I'm like so excited to learn from both Dr. Stoneroy and Dr. Black. I'm forgetting it's a panel, but I guess I really, really appreciate, because I can tell you're a phenomenal teacher, even as you talk. Dr. Black, obviously, he knows how I feel. I think he's great, but it takes a lot, I think, from an individual to be a great teacher, because it's just really, really underappreciated. I think maybe when it comes to failure, I'll start with the failures, because I have a lot. I'm just kidding. I'm honestly, as an undergrad, and especially when you're leading a bunch of students and different things, you're like, these are my peers, but at the same time, you're doing something that's outside of what their scope is right now. And it's such a weird, like corroborative experience, because as you're going through, you are experiencing their experience, but they're also coming to you for advice for things, and they're also trying to learn from you, and you're also trying to make sure you're supplying them with the things necessary for them, but you're learning those things as you find them. And so I think that some of the joys I get are from those simple experiences like that, like recognizing that sometimes timelines don't look straight. They can actually be two things like simultaneously that don't necessarily usually happen in that order. I could be learning and teaching at the same time. And I'm sure that a lot of teachers will probably say the same thing, but it's so enriching when you see that it's actually benefit your target population or group of people. Some experiences for me right now, at least that are fresh, that feel like joys, is like when I work at a diabetes clinic, and one of the things that we do at the end of our patients coming in is giving them full scope diabetes education, and have them pitch to us how they'll fit it into their cultural diets, and how they'll take everything we said and basically package it in a way that's actually sustainable for them. And we have an interpreter there kind of making sure that what they're saying is matching up with what we just taught them. And the feeling of them actually touching on all of the points that we mentioned to them and making sure they understand the importance of it. And you can tell based on the way they're communicating. Obviously, I'm not understanding yet, but then the interpreter tells me everything, and I'm just like, check, check, check. It just feels like such a worthwhile experience, and it's so draining, but you almost feel like you got all your energy back because it's worth it. You actually did something, and it's going to benefit somebody long term. And I think that that's a huge joy. Now, when it comes to failures, I think that for me, some of the biggest things that I guess hit me harder and have me really pausing is when maybe I've put so much energy, effort, and resources that feel almost scarce as a student into something, and it just falls through. Sometimes it can be for my own doing because I didn't prioritize properly and balance keeps coming up, but it's huge. And then obviously times where I have put in so much effort, but for one reason or another, others, a part of the team, didn't do their part. And I've tried my hardest not to step into their role. And I kind of almost see it falling and I can't do it. I shouldn't do anything. So I don't do anything. And I'm just like, this is so difficult, like to almost pre-experience grief. But I think that all of that is expected in spaces where you're doing any kind of teamwork, especially leadership. But like you're seeing the avalanche and you know how to fix it, but you kind of have to just let it go. But yeah.
I would agree with what's been said by our other panelists. I think the things that have been the worst for me in terms of failures have been things where it was my fault and somebody else was relying on me and I let them down. And then the reverse for joy, when somebody was really struggling with something, especially in the classroom, and then they finally get it and that light bulb goes on, that brings me great, great joy. When I get to be underwater, scuba diving, that brings me great, great joy. Still today, even though I've done thousands and thousands of dives at this point. And I think, although it was hard for me when things went wrong that were out of my control, I felt a lot less disappointment in that than things that were, I balanced this wrong, or, I could have really put more into this, and now somebody's not getting as much out of it. I think I can really relate to that, that Dr. Stoneroy shared with lectures and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that is all really important. And Rahmah, something that you said about the folks that you work with, like I think that it's so something that I really see in you is how you meet people where they're at. And because like making sure that the treatment that or the education that you're giving to somebody actually fits in with their own life, and how that fits in with their own life is so important. Because yeah, you can say, okay, you need to do this, this, and this, but like if you don't understand where they're coming from, then you can't really, like neither of you are getting to that point of understanding where you can actually move forward in a way that is the healthiest and best direction, because it is like their own lived experience, and you have to be, it's about respect. Like I think a lot of it goes to respect, and so yeah. And I love that you both enjoy teaching and have had experiences that go to like, oh, the student, like when they get it, they get it, or like being able to have students love being able to teach younger students, and that kind of giving back to the younger generations, I think is so beautiful. And that was like one of my favorite things that I loved when I was a TA or anything. And I would meet with students individually and they would come to me and they're like, well, I don't understand all this. And it's like, okay, well, like, where are you coming from and what is your current understanding and what's the thing that's missing here and how do we bridge that together? And it's just like, once they get it, it's just like the best day ever. Doesn't matter what else has happened that day. That is the thing that is, you go home and you're like, yes, that was a good day. So that's really awesome. And uh I kind of like the next place that like I go to automatically is like community. And so what does community mean to you and how do you like how do you feel community? How do you live community? How what does community mean to you? Let's just go there and see.
Okay, I'm itching to answer this one. For me, community is survival. It is resilience, it is structure, it is home. All of those words come to mind. My parents come from two different sides of the world, but when they came here, they immediately built community. To this day, there are people who are like, I knew you when you were in diapers. And it's as funny as most of us don't like appreciate that as adults. You think about it, and it really does like give you such a comfort to recognize that your roots are all over the world, walking in different environments. You have a home essentially in different people all over the place if you're willing to be open and receptive to recognizing that, you can fit in anywhere. If you know how to bring things that are needed to a space and be honest with yourself when you feel like you don't belong somewhere and just seek community elsewhere. And I think it's one thing to like, look for community, but really if you look around, there's infinite small versions of community in different ways depending on what it is you're looking for. And so anytime I'm mentoring any student, the first thing I hear oftentimes is that they're complaining about they're not finding their group, or I'm not finding my I don't know if I don't have a friend group that does this, I don't have my pre-med group. And I always tell them, put like a little pile of individual interests that you have, and then go seek individuals that you think already have those things, talk to them about it, and they already have a community. Most of the times you'll just fit right in because you're interested in that. And it works. I've had yet to have one student come back and be like, well, I'm still looking. And I think that it's really important to just go looking for community by being a community yourself for people when they're interested in learning from you, and being interested in others. Like I love that is again, Tara's great questions.
You really can't follow Rahmah with a better answer. That was great, Rahmah. I think I very much agree that community is survival, and there's real strength. Humans are social creatures, and having that dynamic really helps people to survive, and thrive in an environment. And that really makes a difference in a number of ways. And when we don't appreciate that as much, we lose that strength, and we lose that ability to recover from things that happen to us. It's great.
And I agree with everything that's been said very well. Community is a place where you feel like you belong, that you feel like you can help other people and other people are there to support you. And I think everything else has been covered that I would cover.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that community and the ways that you all live through community have been so evident in the ways that you approach your mentorship and your leadership. And like I just see like the directness between the two of how you all lead and the ways that you are both supported by and continue to support the communities that you all are part of. So I, for one, very much appreciate you all, and I'm glad to be in this little neurosci community with you so that we could talk about all these things. So since we're kind of getting towards the end of our structured time, I have two last questions, and I would love to know if you could walk us through a day in your life. Whether that's your career or a day of volunteering or, Yeah, just a day. What does that look like for you?
My days are so different depending on the days. Um, Usually I'll teach one or two classes. Sometimes, depending on the day, three classes. And I'll usually have one of those that's very hands-on, and others that are more interactive, uh, but less hands-on, actually physically manipulating things. Um, I almost always have meetings with students, both leaders of student groups, students that are interested in getting advice for the next steps, or students that are struggling with some of the course material, to help improve. Um, Meetings, I don't think there's a day that I go without some meeting. Although most of the meetings that I do as faculty are on Fridays, and that's just like a packed day of meetings because not as many people have courses to teach those days. But I also give myself some time. I try and plan some time during the day that's just mine, whether that's to work on something or just take a moment to rethink things that I'm doing. Um, and very much at the beginning of the day, I sort of plan out, here's what I'm going to do today, and chunk out the time to say, all right, I need X amount of time for this and X amount of time for this to get done.
Yeah, mine is similar too, that, I kind of get up and think about the day and what's, already on my calendar and when I have free time and when I have scheduled time. And today, for example, I taught two classes. So I got up and, I worked on, reviewing the material for the content that I'm teaching and reviewing how I teach it so that it'll be a good lecture. And sometimes I'll do that at home before I even go into work. And then go into work, and start checking email and see if there's anything that I have to, address right away. So we have students that, are this time of year in athletics, and so they're going to be off traveling and they're going to miss an exam. And I teach functional neuroanatomy, so it's hard to do makeup exams because we have real human specimens. So dealing with makeup exams is always a problematic issue. And then, you got to eat somewhere in there. And if I can, I like to take 20 minutes to just go for a walk. And sometimes that walk is, just walking around campus and listening to the birds and just looking at all the crabapple trees that are now in bloom. But today on my walk, I was actually thinking about this panel and the questions that you had provided and, how I would answer them. And then sometimes when I'm on a walk, things will come to me that, I've been trying to think of, but when I'm sitting at my desk, you need to take a break sometimes. And so I like to do that. And then I came back from that and got ready for my next class, which was a review session because we're having an exam tomorrow. And so we, had students asking us questions. And then, yes, committee meetings are usually at least a couple a week, not necessarily every day for me, but usually a couple a week. And then because I do mentor so many faculty, I often have one or two faculty members stopping by my office and asking me questions. The next promotion cycle is coming up, so that's more frequent right now. And I also work with a group of biomedical engineering students. And so they're doing their senior capstone project. And so I submitted a proposal for them to develop a teaching tool that I would like to use in my classes. And so sometimes I'll be meeting with them as well to go over, okay, is where they've gotten in this project, what I envisioned for this teaching tool. And then we talk about, what needs to be modified. And again, since it's spring semester, we're getting to the point where, it's almost time for them to submit their full project. So that would be an example, I guess, of a day that I would have.
I'm sitting here like, wow, that's a lot to look forward
I
to. But for me, again, like Dr. Black said, it varies. It really does. But so I'm just going to stick to the things that generally just do not change. So for me, obviously I'm Muslim. I pray early in the morning. We wake up 5, 6 a.m. and I pray and I take time to just be reflective, be intentional about my day. I plan my whole day. Oftentimes things are already on my calendar just because of obviously pre-planning, and things come up and you put it on your calendar. So I'll check those things, and then I'll take time to eat, like Dr. Stonroy said. And it's interesting because I laughed a little bit to myself. I was like, Dr. Black, do you eat? Just kidding. Because it gets very busy when you have so many things and so many projects that you're so invested in and so interested in that you almost take a backseat to yourself. So I always try my hardest to make time for family. That's like my version of me time because I have so many siblings. So after I leave home early in the morning, like 6, 7 a.m., I go to my family's home and I pick up some of my siblings, drop some of them off at school. It's usually like 3 of them in 2 different schools. And then I go downtown and I run it early in the morning at the gym and then to my lab. And then from there, it's some varied version of class, work projects that I have had rolled over into the school week, homework assignments, like obviously when undergrad. But then by the time I finish my homework and things, I have to head home and of course fit my prayers in throughout the day. And it's really, it's a lot, but it always is fulfilling, and I'm very grateful for that.
Very nice. I love how you all like mentioned the ways that you pour back into yourselves, because I can imagine that so much of your days, because of how fulfilling it is, and I relate to that definitely, it's so easy to pour in everywhere else. So I love that you all kind of mentioned the ways that you take time and pour into yourselves as well. Because I think that pouring into yourself can make you a better leader and mentor and all of the things that we talked about, because it is very hard to pour from a cup that is trickling. So my last main question is, what advice do you all have for new students or the younger folks who are starting to pursue neuroscience, whether they're going into research or they go into medicine or a secret third thing, or I guess not secret, there are many different directions that are out there. But what advice do you have for them as they're beginning their career or even just starting to explore that inkling of interest in neuroscience?
I think my biggest advice to students is to stay curious, and to not forget how to play, because we learn and we grow a lot from play. So when you really are working on things, it's good to, especially within neuroscience, specialize in a certain area, and become the go-to person for that, and then rely on collaborations with others for other things, so that you can advance things and then work with other people to join together to advance things. It's easy to get sort of in your box, but science is best when it's collaborative. I hate, like Dr. Stone Roy hated team projects when I was in classes growing up, because very often I would end up doing most of the project for the team because it just had to be done the way that I thought it should be done, and I didn't feel like I could get the team to do it that way. And as I grew and as I learned that no, that's not the right approach. And it really takes working as a team, and the work is better when you do that well as a team. And more importantly, if something goes wrong, somebody falls ill or somebody has something happen, if there's a team, the work can still go on, and get done in a way that just one individual can't do if something happens. Um, and so my best advice to students is to find joy in the things that you do, and then work on the things that are struggles, but make sure that you always give time for yourself and your own joy.
I think that's a great answer. In addition to that, Sorry, I just blanked out. It's been a long day. What was the question again? Sorry.
Advice for
Oh, yes, that's right.
yes.
So advice, and basically part of what Michael was saying is you need to find your community to help you support and grow. And if you're looking into a research position, if you're an undergraduate, you want to get research experience, I always tell students to try to go to poster sessions that are on campus. So for example, we have a Celebrate Research, Undergraduate Research and Creativity Symposium next week, where undergraduates are presenting research that they've been involved with. And so I tell my classes that if they're interested in getting into a research lab, go talk to these undergraduates, find out how they did it and which labs are open to having undergraduates come in and work as volunteers. So that's one thing that I like to tell them. So, and in addition to retaining joy and, you know, being curious and all those things, but also don't be too hard on yourself. That, you know, there are failures and, you know, stuff will happen that, you know, you don't like, but just keep on keeping on and, you know, keep your goals in mind, and nobody's perfect and mistakes happen, and, you know, that's okay. So, yeah.
I really wanted to listen because obviously I'm a student, and I think that those are really great advice, and I love it. I think that for me, I actually gave a couple advice today in one of my lab classes, and I was thinking that one of the main things I find myself saying all the time is that just encourage yourself. Be okay not having external encouragement. Find the things that you find yourself pushing yourself to do and just run with them. And I said that I find myself saying that a lot actually. When students like, I don't even know what I like. I don't really know what I want to do. I'm like, well, you have to like some things. They're like, yeah, but it's not this and it's not that. I'm like, what is it though? You have some things. And oftentimes it just takes them having to step back from these preconceived ideas of what they think a good student is or what they think a successful individual looks like, and recognizing that you're you. That's your starting point. And then where are you trying to go? So I will always tell them, encourage yourself, find ways to encourage yourself. And this is advice for myself all the time. I'm giving advice. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, good reminder. But like you need to be able to be, like Dr. Black said, curious. And I really love that Dr. Stoneroy said to find your community, because again, I told you that's really something super, super important to me. But it really does the heavy lifting for you, and you kind of just, as you're encouraging others, they're encouraging you. And another thing I love telling students, especially like the newer, fresher, like neuroscience students, is drop the competitiveness. We're all in this together. Be an open hand to give and an open hand to receive, and you will see how far you go. And I always tell them, I'm like, you ask me all these questions. Do I seem hesitant at all? They're like, oh, thank you so much. I'm like, do that for the next person, and it'll come back to you. I love it.
I think that is a really important piece of advice that I've heard from a lot of pre-medical students who went on to medical school. Um, because Georgia State tends to be a little bit more collaborative in terms of students helping each other out. They get to medical school and there's so many students who are, you know, they're ultra competitive and that's how they've learned to do things. And they really struggle in medical school because it really helps to have a collaborative study group that's willing to work together, and they've never experienced that, and they don't have that ingrained in who they are and what they do. And the Georgia State students are like, listen, you can do this. This is okay. Like, you know, we don't have to compete to all succeed. We can all succeed together, working together. And so it's something that they feel like they come from it, from the university, having already learned, that's really helped them in the process.
Yeah, I think that those are all really great, and something that actually came up last night with having because we had Dr. Janavi Ramesh, who was a Georgia State student, and we did kind of talk about that competitiveness and how that plays out. And I think that there is such a predominant means of thinking that's like, oh, you have to do X, Y, and Z, and that is what makes you a good pre-medical student or a good whatever. And that kind of like flies in the face of collaboration sometimes, because you are so, this is how I have to do it. This is how everybody has to do it. And so like you almost automatically like put yourself in a box where you don't need to. And I just lost my own train of thought. Oh, I got it back. Something that I think has been kind of said throughout the panel is kind of these alternative definitions for success, and kind of breaking out of that. Okay, well, this is how it's taught, but what does it actually mean to like live it? And being able to incorporate everybody's strengths and be able to forge your own path, however that may look. So yeah, I think that those are all great pieces of advice. And then I love, Rahmah, that you talked about like, bringing up to students like, hey, what are you interested in? Because there's still something that you can do with that. You just kind of may take a little bit more time to figure out what that actually looks like in practice, but it's worth exploring, and kind of goes into that like curiosity. And I love that you brought up about play, Michael, about being able to play, because that is so critical. And also just makes the curiosity more fun if you don't put as many constraints on yourself. So yeah, I
This
will
has
end the
been
structure portion
wonderful.
here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Great
thank you
interviewer for
all.
this panel, and it makes it so much easier to share.
Oh, well, thank you. I absolutely love talking to all of you, and I really appreciate your time and everything. And we can kind of break out into kind of a more casual discussion now. So any of your burning questions for each other, for me, let's talk about them. And also, whenever you have to go, please do. And if you need to take a break, I definitely encourage that as well.
I did think of one other thing that I would give as a piece of advice to future neuroscientists, which is it's easy to think that you know what's going on, especially as you gain more knowledge. Um, but those people that have done this for a long time and gain knowledge begin to realize how much we don't know. And keeping that in mind, I think, is really important. Um, you know, it's almost like there's a lot of pressure to say, well, this is what I'm going to do with my life. But if you look in past history, most of the jobs we have today weren't even invented 50, 70 years ago. And so to expect somebody to say, this is what I'm going to do in my life as a career 50 years from now is unrealistic. And so you shouldn't feel so much pressure that you have to know where you're headed and how you're going to get there. Um, because probably your road is going to be circuitous and you're going to end up somewhere where you weren't necessarily expecting. But as long as you're working hard to get to that point and you're following the things that you like and the things that interest you, you can really move into those positions with a lot less stress. And I think that's important to keep in mind because it's so easy to think like, I'm not good enough for this, I can't do this, and forget that you can grow into it, that there's definitely this path. One of the things that's really interesting to me about Georgia State, graduate students will tell you this all the time. They feel like they're just faking it and trying to get through. They have this imposter syndrome. Um, that concept came from two psychologists at Georgia State, which I think is very appropriate because I think very often people at Georgia State have that imposter syndrome feel. Um, but it's everywhere. Everybody feels that. And so don't feel like you're the only one, because everybody's going to have failures and everybody's going to have times where they feel like they don't belong where they are and that they don't have the ability to grow into that position. Um, it just takes time, and it does take hard work, but it's an achievable.
Yeah, I love what you said about kind of your path. My mentor, Dr. Leslie Tolbert, she had a number of different experiences as she was moving through her career. And I remember this really transformative conversation that we had. And she was like, yeah, I was judged so much. And that like really got to me. But, you know, like, how dare those people judge my crooked path? And I was like, yes, yes. But like really like that, like that's exactly how she said it. And I was like, you know what, that is so true. And she has been, you know, phenomenal mentor and was an incredible teacher when she was teaching. And you know, her crooked path led her to that. And I think that that is just so beautiful.
I think also the idea of not limiting yourself and realizing that you can grow is very important. So when I was an undergraduate in college, if you told me that I would be teaching neuroscience at a university, I wouldn't have believed you. I was like painfully shy. I wouldn't even raise my hand in a class to ask a question. I would instead just, you know, I never even went to office hours because I was afraid of the professor. And now I'm sitting here in front of a class, you know, teaching them about neuroscience. And my pathway was also very crooked. And I've also gotten some, you know, grief about the way I've chose to do things, especially when I decided to have children. And that gets back to the disappointments. I don't know if you'd call it a failure. But when my children were young, there were a period of a few years when I felt like I wasn't doing anything well. You know, I was getting criticized by stay-at-home moms because I wasn't, you know, doing all the things that they do. And then people at work were saying, well, why don't you get a nanny so you can be here 14 hours a day? And I was, well, I had kids because I like them and I want to spend time with them. So yeah, there are times in your career when you need to be sure of what you want out of your life and then start to just get a, you know, let things roll off of you when other people are criticizing you and how you're doing things. And it helps to know what you want and what your values are and what you think are important to be able to put up that wall and say, you know, I'm sorry I'm not doing it this way, the way that you would like to, but I'm going to go nurse my baby on my lunch hour and then I'll be back. You know? So I think, you know, that's some of my advice.
I was just saying that I want to start journaling back, and I already have so much that I want to reflect on. So great. And obviously, Dr. Stoneroy, as someone who, if there was a word short of worship when it comes to my mother, and obviously my dad, but obviously the mom, parents are the reason amazing people exist. They're the reason that the world keeps going around, both parents. Obviously, as simple biology as that is, it goes to show that like imperfection is a part of life. And honestly, sometimes it's what breeds what we now learn is perfect. I love whenever I hear parents talking about their struggles. I'm like, and us as kids are just happy to be here, happy that you're doing. But I think that the way I would answer that question is just, I think overall, again, as a student, for me at least, that's talking from a student perspective, I'm always open to learning. And I think that it's just such a simple answer, but really, truly just learning anytime I can and doing my best to be as good as a learner as I can. And recognizing that it's not going to be pretty all of the time. And it may not even reach whatever expectation is there or parameter is there, but that learning isn't constricted to time frames either. Like sometimes an exam will pass and I'll still find myself digging into the material. Yes, I may not have gotten the mark that I know I'm now capable of 2 days later, but I'm happy that I've learned it and I'm walking away with it. And of course, you know, you want to find a way to fit into whatever structure you're in already, but it just, I think learning and always being a learner is something I will never detach from. It's very different probably answer, but it's it just came to my head right away when you asked the question that I'm learning. Like it's really important for me in every capacity.
To continue off that, I think that's the case for all of us. That's why we went into this kind of a career, is because we do constantly learn new things in our positions. in new content, and we have the freedom to go dive into content and learn new stuff, and that's part of our job. And I think that's just awesome that we get to do that. And then we're around people that are also interested in learning new things, and also just interested in, especially since we're in neuroscience and biology, how things work and how our own bodies work. And just, yeah, to be able to talk to people about that, I think is just it's really cool.
Yeah, and for Michael Black, he dives not just into content, but into the water.
I think there are some great stories out there for future neuroscientists in history. And one that's sort of maybe the most pertinent right now for a lot of people in thinking about it is how the mRNA technology inside COVID vaccines happened. I mean, Drew Wiseman and Caitlin Carrico met at a photocopy machine. I mean, how haphazard can you get? Um, there was no like planned, like, we need to do this and let's come together. They just struck up a conversation while they were waiting to photocopy articles. Um, and then developed a partnership where they worked really hard for decades to figure things out. And there's some great interviews of Dr. Carrico, who talks about her mom and how her mom was unfailingly supportive of her, and how, she couldn't get a grant, she didn't have a team, she got demoted. Her mom was like, maybe one day we're going to hear your name for the Nobel Prize. And she's like, no, mom, I can't even get a grant. Um, and then she went on to do all of this great work. And there's her name in the Nobel Prize winners. Um, you never know what's going to come, and what your legacy is going to be. I thought that was something great, that Oprah Winfrey shared, where she said, "Oh, this school, that's my legacy." And Maya Angelou said to her, "You don't know that. You don't know what your legacy is going to be. You could die not knowing what your legacy is going to be. That will play out over time." I think those stories of others that have gone before us, and listening to some of the struggles that they have, and sharing our struggles with others, because it's easy to say, "Oh, I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this," and act like that's the straight path that you got. Um, it really helps to know that others are going through very circuitous routes too, and sometimes those lead to the best destinations.
That's very comforting. I always like, and my younger siblings will say, "Oh my gosh," they will praise everything that they think I am in their version of seeing me as an older sibling. And the whole time I'm just like, little do they know. It's also very encouraging because yes, we see the mess, we do, but a lot of times people will see me and tell me like, "Oh my gosh, I'm trying to get where you're at," and I'm just like, "Oh, and where is that?" Because you see where you also have to go, where I'm headed, or hopefully where I'm headed. So that's super encouraging. Thank you, Dr. Black and Dr. Stone Roy and Tara. I feel like I've learned so much, and it's only been an hour.
Yeah, me too. I love, listening to all of the different perspectives that you all bring. And I think uh that note about legacy is something that I've thought about for a long time. And I always go back to like what a privilege it is to age. And when we think about longevity of things and how long some things can take, I think that it's such a beautiful thing, the transformations that somebody will go through to get to where they are. And that's, persisting despite not being able to get a grant, or having a lecture not resonate with students, or something falls through. Like, I think that continuing to go because of just that question and that curiosity is so striking to me.
I think it's really a lot easier to be persistent if you really enjoy what you're doing or what you're studying. So yeah, that's good advice for people to, what do you enjoy, and try to, pick a pathway that aligns with that. But don't rule anything out, because you might end up teaching when you are afraid to talk to people. So,
Yeah, I think that that's so interesting that you brought that up too, because when you were talking about it originally, how shy you were, I was thinking about how not only do you teach, but you also mentor younger faculty members too. And I think that that is just a really like beautiful thing that, kind of came around in that way, and that you are being able to teach the new generation, and that generation is able to teach the next one, and like being able to help them find their steps. So the growth, I love it.
Thank you so much for doing this session. This has been
Yeah.
fantastic to learn from these panelists. Um, I'm always uh, so impressed, Rahmah, how much knowledge and wisdom you have, and how articulate you are about it. It's
I appreciate
wonderful to spend time with you.
you as well, always. Does not feel that way, so that's very comforting to hear. I've like you were mentioning, Tara, about your mentor saying that, she's had a crooked path. I am in the bend right now of a lot of different things, and I feel like it's very comforting hearing some individuals as successful as you are, Dr. Black and Dr. Stone Roy, like to hear that you also had points in your career where, you had a lot of different things, maybe commenting or circuitous for you, but it's encouraging. So I appreciate you saying that. I'm trying my best.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have just a really like the ways that you ground yourself and like help others ground and see the tremendous capabilities in others, I think is so impactful. And especially as you mentor younger folks, and having the kind of perspective of how can I learn from them, I think that is so yeah, impactful, because you're really able to see them, and that is a stunning quality about you.
Thank you so much. I've heard plenty negative, and I think that a lot of times it ends up being the reason I keep pushing the things that matter to me, because when people, I'm sure all of you have experienced people giving you their version of what they think you are and where they think you're headed or where they think you can accomplish. And when it's so starkly different than what you envision, it's easier to just let it roll off your back. And I think that it makes me even more staunch supporter of those that I think might be vulnerable and may not have that kind of spine. So I think that it comes from having experienced some of the worst opinions. So thank you so much.
I've also really enjoyed this panel, and I've learned something from each of you. So I really appreciate being invited to participate in this.
Thank you for inviting me. I really learned so much from all of you.
Absolutely. I'm so, so glad to have had all of you, and been able to see the ways that you all bounce off of each other, and have learned from each other is makes my heart so happy.
It's so nice to finally meet you in a face-to-face, Dr. Stoneroy. I remember when we were evaluating, reading your application and thinking, wow, this is somebody who really gets it done. Please say hi to Dr. Quirk for us.
Yes.
He was a partner through the very hard times of COVID when everything seemed like it was falling apart and we were just trying to keep things together for neurosci.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, Phil is wonderful. I just ran into him today as we were passing each other teaching, and yeah, he's a great individual.
Yeah. I hope to get him on a panel one day too, because I think that
Oh,
he
he would
is
be
so
really good.
stellar. Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah, adore Phil. And it's funny because the meeting where I met Phil was at San Diego SFN 2016 neurosci meeting in person. And that is like the transformative moment that developed this position that I am in as the national media chair, and was also the meeting where Dr. Rachel Dozer met Phil as well, and and I'm pretty sure was like one of the reasons why she started considering Colorado State. So it's so neat, and Phil is just a great guy.
He is, yeah. And Rachel is awesome too. We
Yes.
do have some wonderful people. And I'm
Yes.
sure that's the case at, your universities as well, because we've all built those communities and there's just awesome people in neuroscience. But yeah, it's great.
Yes, definitely.
Well, I'm gonna have to head out. I have
Yes.
some homework that's waiting.
Yes.
But so great to put a face to the name, Tara. And always great to see you, Dr. Black, and catch up, even if it's rough running into each other on campus. And such a pleasure to meet you, Dr. Stoneroy. Hopefully in person one day, you never know.
Yeah, it's nice to meet you too. And I hope we do meet in person sometime.
Yes.
Thank you. Y'all
Best
all
of
have-
luck with your upcoming graduation and your
Oh,
gap
thank you.
year and your new position. You're going to do so stellar, and I can't wait to see what you learn and how
Thank
you
you
use that.
so much. I'm excited. I've already looked into some of the literature he shared, but I hope y'all have a great evening.
You as well. Take care. Thank you so much.
Have a good
Thank you.
evening, everybody. Good night.
Bye. Have a good night. It was nice to meet you all.
Yes, you as well.